Deep within the peaceful gardens of Jetavana Monastery, where ancient trees stretched their branches toward the endless sky, the evening wind moved gently through the leaves. The golden light of the setting sun slowly disappeared behind the distant hills. The sounds of the world became softer and softer, until only the quiet whispers of nature remained. Inside the monastery, monks gathered around the Blessed One. The Buddha sat beneath the shade of the trees, surrounded by a peaceful silence. His presence was like a calm lamp burning in the darkness, a light that did not shine with force, but gently guided those who were lost. Many monks came to listen to his teachings. Some came seeking wisdom. Some came seeking freedom from suffering. Some came simply because their hearts were tired and they wished to find peace. Among these monks was one who possessed great physical strength. He was young, energetic, and confident in his abilities. His body was stronger than many of his fellow monks, and because of this, pride slowly began to grow inside his heart. Whenever he saw an older monk struggling to carry something heavy, he would laugh. Whenever he saw a weaker monk walking slowly, he would make careless remarks. Whenever someone could not complete a difficult task as quickly as he could, he would look down upon them. His words were sharp like small arrows. Although they caused no visible wounds, they left pain inside the hearts of those who heard them. Some monks remained silent. Some endured his behavior patiently. Some wondered why a person who had entered the path of compassion could still carry such arrogance within himself. The Buddha saw everything. He saw not only the actions of this monk, but also the hidden seeds growing inside his mind. The Buddha understood that physical strength was only temporary. A strong body would one day become weak. A powerful person would one day become helpless. A proud heart would eventually experience suffering. That evening, after the teaching had ended, the Buddha gently called the monk before him. The monk approached and bowed. The Buddha looked at him with kindness, not anger. His voice was calm like still water. "Monk," the Buddha said, "do not look down upon those who appear weaker than you. The world contains many beings whose value cannot be measured by their appearance or their strength. A small candle can illuminate a dark room. A gentle stream can carve through solid stone. And a being that seems weak may possess a heart greater than the strongest warrior." The monk lowered his head but remained silent. The Buddha continued, "Long ago, before this life, I was born as a magnificent white horse. In that life, I possessed great strength and speed. Many believe that my power came from my body. But the true strength of that life did not come from my muscles, nor from my ability to defeat enemies. My true strength came from compassion." The evening wind passed through the trees. The monks listened carefully. The story of the white horse was not merely a tale from the past. It was a mirror reflecting the nature of every human heart. The Buddha began to tell them, long ago, in the ancient kingdom of Varanasi, there lived a king named Brahmadatta. In that time, I was born as a pure white horse named Sindhava. I was unlike ordinary horses. My body was strong and noble. My steps were swift like the wind flowing across the mountains. My spirit was fearless, yet my heart remained gentle. The king loved me deeply and considered me his most precious companion. Whenever the kingdom faced danger, I stood beside the king. Whenever the people needed protection, I carried him toward the battlefield. But even the strongest beings cannot avoid suffering. One day, a great storm approached the kingdom. Not a storm of rain and thunder, but a storm created by human ambition. 7 neighboring kingdoms joined together and prepared for war. Their armies marched across the land like a dark cloud covering the earth. The sound of thousands of footsteps shook the valleys. The sound of weapons filled the air. The people of Varanasi looked toward the walls of their city with fear. For they knew a war was coming. And beneath the silent trees of Jetavana, the monks waited to hear what happened next. They did not yet know that the story of a wounded white horse would reveal one of the deepest teachings of the Buddha, that true victory is not achieved by destroying enemies, but by ending hatred. The night grew deeper over Jetavana Monastery. The moon slowly climbed above the ancient trees, spreading a gentle silver light across the quiet grounds. The monks remained still. They listened to the Buddha's voice as it carried them back through countless years, beyond the present moment, into an ancient kingdom where courage, suffering, and compassion were about to meet. The Buddha continued, long ago, in the kingdom of Varanasi, King Brahmadatta ruled with great authority. His kingdom was prosperous, and his people lived peacefully. Farmers worked beneath the warm sunlight. Merchants traveled along the roads carrying goods from distant lands. Children played beside the rivers. And at the center of the kingdom stood the royal palace, where I lived as the king's most treasured horse. My name was Sindhava. I was a pure white horse, unlike any other. My body was strong and graceful. My mane shone like threads of silver beneath the morning light. My eyes were calm and clear, yet within them lived an unwavering courage. Many people admired my appearance. Many praised my speed. Many spoke of my strength, but the king loved me for something deeper. He knew that my greatest gift was not my powerful body. It was my loyalty. It was my willingness to protect others. It was the kindness that remained in my heart even when facing danger. Every morning, before the sun rose above the palace walls, servants would carefully prepare Sindhava. They would brush his white coat until it reflected the golden light. They would place beautiful ornaments upon him. They would prepare the finest saddle. But Sindhava never cared about decorations or praise. He did not feel proud because others admired him. He simply understood his responsibility. A true protector does not seek admiration. A true protector quietly carries the weight of others. For many years, Sindhava accompanied King Brahmadatta. He carried the king across mountains. He crossed rivers. He stood beside soldiers during difficult journeys. Yet he never acted out of pride. He never thought, "I am stronger than others. I deserve more respect. I should stand above weaker beings." Instead, he thought, "If my strength can help someone, then my strength has meaning. If my life can protect another life, then my life has purpose." This was the wisdom hidden inside the heart of the great white horse. But one day, peace was disturbed. Far beyond the borders of Varanasi, 7 neighboring kings gathered together. They looked toward the prosperous kingdom of Brahmadatta with desire. They saw fertile lands. They saw wealthy cities. They saw treasures protected behind strong walls. And greed began to grow in their hearts. They said, "Why should Brahmadatta possess such a powerful kingdom? Why should his people enjoy peace and prosperity? Let us join our armies and take what we want." So the 7 kings united their forces. Their armies became enormous. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers marched toward Varanasi. The earth trembled beneath their footsteps. Flags filled the horizon. War drums echoed through the valleys. The peaceful fields that once carried the songs of farmers now carried the sound of approaching armies. When the news reached the palace, fear spread among the people. The ministers gathered urgently. The generals studied the enemy forces. Everyone understood the danger. The 7 kingdoms were powerful. Their soldiers were numerous. Their weapons were prepared. The royal horses were brought forward. But when the soldiers approached the battlefield, many horses became frightened. They felt the smell of war. They heard the thunder of weapons. They saw the endless rows of enemy soldiers. Some horses trembled. Some refused to move. Some turned away from the battlefield. The generals became anxious. Without a powerful war horse, even the bravest warrior could not break through enemy lines. One commander finally stepped forward before King Brahmadatta. He bowed deeply and said, "Great king, the horses we have are unable to face this battle. The enemy army is too strong. But there is one horse who may be able to protect this kingdom. The white horse Sindhava." The king became silent. He looked toward the stable where Sindhava rested. He knew the coming battle would be terrible. He knew that asking Sindhava to enter the battlefield meant asking him to face great danger. But he also knew, when the kingdom needed him most, Sindhava would never abandon those who depended on him. The next morning, beneath a darkened sky, the gates of the palace opened. The sound of armor filled the air. King Brahmadatta wore his battle armor. And beside him stood the great white horse. Sindhava looked toward the distant battlefield. He could sense the fear of the soldiers. He could hear the cries of the people. He understood what was waiting ahead. Pain, blood, death. Yet his heart remained peaceful. Because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is walking forward while carrying compassion within the heart. The king gently placed his hand upon Sindhava's neck. "My friend," he whispered. "Today, our kingdom depends on you." Sindhava lowered his head. Then he stepped forward. Toward the battlefield. Toward the storm. Toward a destiny that would be remembered for thousands of years. The morning sky above Varanasi was covered with heavy clouds. The golden sunlight that usually warmed the kingdom seemed hidden behind a veil of darkness. The people stood silently along the city walls. Mothers held their children close. Elders looked toward the distant horizon. Farmers who once carried baskets of grain now held their breath as they watched thousands of soldiers approach. The sound of war grew louder. Drums echoed like thunder. Horses stepped heavily upon the earth. Metal armor reflected cold flashes of light. The peaceful kingdom that once rested beneath the songs of birds had become a place filled with uncertainty. Inside the royal army, many soldiers felt fear rising in their hearts. They had trained for battle. They had carried weapons. They had promised to defend their homeland. But when they saw the endless enemy forces before them, they understood the true weight of war. A single person could be brave. A small group could be courageous. But facing 7 united kingdoms was like standing before a mountain made of steel. At the center of the army stood King Brahmadatta. His face remained calm, but those closest to him could see the concern within his eyes. He was not afraid for himself. He was worried for his people. A king's true burden is not wearing a crown. It is carrying the suffering of those who depend on him. Beside him stood Sindhava. The great white horse looked across the battlefield. The enemy armies stretched beyond sight. Thousands of soldiers carried bows, spears, and swords. The air was filled with the sharp scent of iron. The ground trembled beneath countless footsteps. Yet Sindhava remained still. The soldiers watched him. Some wondered, how can one horse face such a powerful army? Can even the strongest creature overcome such impossible odds? But Sindhava did not measure the enemy by numbers. He did not look at the weapons. He did not focus on the danger. He looked beyond all of these things. He saw frightened people. He saw families who wished only to live peacefully. He saw a kingdom that needed protection. And because he saw suffering, he found courage. For compassion can create a strength greater than anger. When anger fights, it seeks to destroy. When compassion fights, it seeks to protect. The battle began. The gates of Varanasi opened. The sound of thousands of soldiers moving forward filled the valley. King Brahmadatta rode upon Sindhava. The white horse moved like a river of light flowing through darkness. At first, the enemy soldiers laughed. They saw only one horse carrying one warrior. They believed the kingdom had no hope. Is this all they have? Only one horse? Do they believe a single animal can stop 7 armies? Their laughter echoed across the battlefield. But Sindhava continued forward. Step by step. Calmly. Without hatred. Without pride. The first line of enemy soldiers raised their weapons. Arrows filled the sky. For a moment, the battlefield disappeared beneath a storm of black feathers and sharp steel. Thousands of arrows flew toward them. King Brahmadatta prepared himself. The soldiers around him feared the worst. But Sindhava did not stop. The white horse lowered his body. His muscles moved with incredible power. His heart remained steady. The arrows fell like rain. Some struck his armor. Some pierced his skin. Pain spread through his body. But Sindhava continued forward. The first line collapsed. The second line approached. Then the third. The fourth. The enemy soldiers could not believe what they were seeing. A single horse was moving through the battlefield like an unstoppable force. Not because he hated those before him. Not because he desired victory for his own glory. But because he carried a promise. A promise to protect. A promise to serve. A promise to reduce suffering. Each step became heavier. Each breath became more painful. Blood began flowing beneath his white coat. The soldiers of Varanasi watched in disbelief. They had seen strong warriors before. They had seen skilled fighters. But they had never seen such courage. Because ordinary courage comes from the desire to win. But the courage of Sindhava came from compassion. And compassion does not ask, "How much can I gain?" It asks, "How much suffering can I prevent?" The battle continued. The white horse broke through another enemy formation. Then another. The 7 armies that once seemed impossible to defeat began to lose their confidence. The soldiers whispered among themselves, "What kind of creature is this? How can something carrying so much pain continue moving forward?" But they did not understand. The strength of Sindhava was not only in his body. It was in his heart. The battlefield became a sea of dust and smoke. The sound of weapons filled the sky. The cries of soldiers echoed across the land. The once peaceful fields outside Varanasi had become a place where countless lives stood between fear and survival. Yet in the middle of this chaos, one figure continued moving forward. A white horse, covered in wounds, carrying a king upon his back, carrying the hope of an entire kingdom within his heart. Sindhava had already broken through the first layers of the enemy army. But the battle was far from over. The 7 kings had not expected such resistance. They stood behind their armies, watching the battlefield with disbelief. They had believed that victory would come quickly. They had believed that their numbers alone would guarantee success. But now they saw something they could not understand. A single horse was changing the direction of the entire war. The first enemy king ordered his soldiers, "Stop that horse. Do not allow him to pass." Thousands of soldiers surrounded Sindhava. Spears pointed toward him. Bows were drawn. Shields formed a wall of steel. For a moment, it seemed impossible for anything to move forward, but Sindhava looked ahead calmly. He did not see a wall of enemies. He saw beings trapped inside fear. He saw soldiers who had also been born with hopes and families. He knew that behind every weapon was a living heart. A heart that wished to be happy. A heart that wished to avoid suffering. This understanding did not make him weak. It made him fearless. Because the one who fights with hatred is controlled by anger. But the one who acts with compassion cannot be defeated by hatred. Sindhava moved forward. The battlefield shook. His hooves struck the ground like thunder. The soldiers stepped backward in fear. They had never seen such determination. The second line of defense collapsed. Then the third. Then the fourth. The first king was captured. The news spread quickly throughout the battlefield. The soldiers of the 7 kingdoms began to panic. How can this be? Our army is enormous. How can one horse defeat thousands of warriors? But Sindhava did not think about defeating anyone. He only continued fulfilling his duty. Protect the king. Protect the people. Prevent greater suffering. The second king sent his strongest warriors. Among them were elite soldiers who had never lost a battle. They carried powerful weapons. They wore heavy armor. They believed no creature could overcome them. But when they faced Sindhava, they encountered something beyond physical strength. They encountered a spirit that could not be broken. The battle continued. One formation after another fell. One commander after another was defeated. The 7 armies that once seemed unstoppable began to tremble. But every victory came with a price. Each time Sindhava passed through an enemy line, more arrows entered his body. The white horse who once shone like moonlight was now covered with blood. His breathing became heavier. His legs became weaker. Pain moved through every part of his body. Yet he continued. The king riding upon him felt every movement. He felt the trembling beneath the saddle. He felt the suffering of his beloved companion. Finally, King Brahmadatta could no longer remain silent. He leaned forward and whispered, "Sindhava, my friend, you have already done enough. Your body has suffered too much. Please stop. We can find another way." The horse heard the king's voice. He understood the sadness behind those words. But he gently continued forward. Because sometimes true compassion requires us to endure difficulty. Not for pride. Not for glory. But because others are depending on us. Sindhava thought, if I stop now, the people behind me may suffer. If I give up now, the hatred between kingdoms may grow even stronger. My pain belongs only to this body. But the suffering of thousands belongs to the world. The horse continued. Another enemy formation fell. The second king was captured. Then the third. Then the fourth. The battlefield became silent. The soldiers who remained could no longer understand what they were witnessing. They had seen warriors fight because they wanted fame. They had seen kings fight because they wanted land. They had seen armies fight because they wanted power. But they had never seen anyone fight only because they wanted to protect others. That was the mystery of Sindhava. His strength was not born from anger. His strength was born from love. The sun began to descend toward the western horizon. The battlefield that had once been filled with thunderous sounds slowly became quieter. The cries of soldiers faded. The clash of weapons became distant. The dust that had covered the sky began to settle. But in the center of the battlefield, one figure still stood. Sindhava. The great white horse who had carried the weight of a kingdom. His body was covered with countless wounds. The arrows that had struck him remained deeply embedded. Blood flowed beneath his white coat, staining it with the color of sacrifice. Yet his eyes remained peaceful. The soldiers watching from both sides could not understand. How could a creature suffering such unbearable pain still carry such calmness? How could a being wounded so deeply still move forward? They had expected anger. They had expected fear. They had expected a creature fighting only for survival. But they saw something completely different. They saw compassion standing in the middle of war. By breaking through the final enemy formation, Sindhava captured the seventh and last king. The 7 rulers who had come with ambition and greed were now defeated. The great war that had threatened countless lives had ended. The soldiers of Varanasi shouted with joy. They believed they had witnessed a miracle. They believed Sindhava had won because he possessed unmatched strength. But they did not yet understand the true reason. Sindhava did not win because he was stronger than everyone else. He won because he refused to allow hatred to control his heart. When the final battle ended, King Brahmadatta guided Sindhava back toward the royal city. The road that once carried armies now became a silent path. People gathered along the streets. They looked upon the white horse with tears in their eyes. Some bowed. Some prayed. Some placed their hands together in gratitude. They saw a hero. But Sindhava did not see himself as a hero. He only saw a responsibility that had been completed. As they approached the palace gates, Sindhava's steps became slower. The strength that had carried him through 7 armies was beginning to leave his body. His breathing became weak. His legs trembled. The king immediately understood. Something was wrong. Sindhava. My friend. The king quickly dismounted. He rushed beside the horse and held his neck. Only then did he truly see the extent of the wounds. The arrows. The blood. The suffering that Sindhava had hidden throughout the battle. The king's eyes filled with tears. Why did you not tell me? Why did you continue when your body was already suffering so much? You could have stopped. You could have saved yourself. Sindhava slowly opened his eyes. Even in his final moments, there was no anger. No regret. Only peace. He looked at the king and spoke softly, "Great king. Please do not grieve for me. My body has endured pain, but my heart has remained free. The greatest suffering does not come from wounds on the body. The greatest suffering comes when the heart is filled with hatred." The king held the horse tightly. Tears fell upon Sindhava's white coat. But you suffered because of my war. You were wounded because you protected me. How can I not feel sorrow? Sindhava answered, My king, protecting those who depend on me was my purpose. But there is something more important I wish to tell you. The 7 kings who attacked our land are now in your hands. Your decision will determine what happens next. The king looked at him silently. Sindhava continued, Do not let victory become the beginning of another war. Do not allow suffering to create more suffering. If you kill them, their people will seek revenge. Their children will inherit anger. Their kingdoms will prepare for another battle. And the cycle of hatred will continue. The king listened carefully. Every word from the wounded horse carried wisdom deeper than any battlefield strategy. Sindhava was not thinking about revenge. He was thinking about generations of people who had not yet been born. He was thinking about children who deserved peace. He was thinking about families who deserved to sleep without fear. The king lowered his head. For the first time, he understood that the greatest victory was not defeating an enemy. The greatest victory was ending the reason for future battles. The battlefield had taught him many things. But the wounded white horse had taught him the most important lesson: a sword can win a war. But only compassion can create peace. The royal palace of Varanasi became silent that night. The victory celebrations had ended. The sounds of music and celebration disappeared. The people returned to their homes. The soldiers placed their weapons aside. The 7 captured kings waited inside the palace, uncertain of their fate. But within the royal chambers, no one was thinking about victory. Everyone was gathered around Sindhava. The great white horse rested upon a soft cloth beneath the warm glow of candlelight. The palace healers carefully examined his wounds. But even the most skilled doctors could only shake their heads. The injuries were too severe. The arrows had pierced too deeply. The loss of blood had weakened his body beyond recovery. King Brahmadatta sat beside him throughout the night. He held Sindhava's head gently. The king who once commanded thousands of soldiers now sat quietly beside a single wounded horse. Because in that moment, he understood something greater than power. A life that had given everything for others was more precious than any treasure in his kingdom. The king whispered, "My friend. You protected my people. You carried me through danger. You faced an entire army while I could only watch. How can I repay such kindness? Sindhava opened his eyes slowly. The candlelight reflected softly within them. My king, he said, do not think about repaying me. Instead, use this moment to understand the true responsibility of power. A ruler is not great because people fear him. A ruler is great because people feel safe beneath his care. The king remained silent. He listened deeply. Sindhava continued, strength itself is not good or evil. A sword can protect the innocent. A sword can also create endless suffering. The value of power depends on the heart that holds it. Those who possess strength must protect those who are weaker. Those who possess wisdom must guide those who are lost. Those who possess authority must remember those who have no voice. The king looked toward the palace windows. Beyond them was the kingdom he ruled. Thousands of people were sleeping peacefully because of the battle that had ended. But he knew peace could disappear again if hatred remained. The 7 enemy kings were still prisoners. Many generals believed they should be executed. They argued, if we forgive them, they will attack again. If we show mercy, others will think we are weak. If enemies are not destroyed, danger will remain. These words seemed reasonable to many people. But Sindhava saw deeper. He saw beyond one battle. He saw the endless chain of revenge. He saw one death creating another. One wound creating another wound. One generation teaching the next generation hatred. The white horse spoke softly, my king. Imagine a fire spreading through a forest. If someone adds more wood to the flames, does the fire become smaller? No, it becomes larger. Hatred is the same. When hatred is answered with more hatred, suffering only grows. But when someone chooses compassion, the cycle can end. The king closed his eyes. The words entered his heart. For many years, kings had been taught that victory meant defeating enemies. But this wounded horse was teaching him another kind of victory. The victory over anger. The victory over pride. The victory over the desire for revenge. Sindhava continued, Great king, those 7 rulers made a terrible choice. They brought armies into our land. They caused suffering, but they are still living beings. They are capable of regret. They are capable of change. If you give them the chance to return home peacefully, perhaps their hearts will remember your kindness. Perhaps future wars will never begin. The king looked at the horse in amazement. A creature lying near death was thinking not about itself. It was thinking about enemies. It was thinking about strangers. It was thinking about future generations. The king finally understood. The greatest beings are not those who never suffer. The greatest beings are those who suffer, yet refuse to create suffering for others. Outside the palace, the night remained quiet. The stars shone above Varanasi. And beneath those stars, a king made a decision that would change the future of many kingdoms. He would choose mercy. Not because he was weak, but because he had discovered a greater strength. The first light of dawn slowly appeared above Varanasi. The darkness of night faded away. Golden sunlight touched the palace walls. Birds began singing among the trees. A new day had arrived. But inside the royal palace, an important decision was waiting to be made. King Brahmadatta stood before the 7 captured kings. The rulers who had once arrived with armies and weapons now stood silently before him. Their armor had been removed. Their weapons had been taken away. The pride they carried when they entered Varanasi had disappeared. They no longer looked like powerful conquerors. They looked like ordinary human beings facing the consequences of their choices. The generals stood behind the king. Many expected a sentence of death. They believed justice meant punishment. They believed peace could only exist when enemies were completely destroyed. One general stepped forward. "Great king," he said, "these 7 rulers attacked our land. They caused suffering among our people. They brought war to our homes. If they are released, they may gather their armies again. We must remove this danger forever." The hall became silent. Everyone waited for the king's answer. Brahmadatta looked toward the 7 kings. Then he remembered Sindhava. He remembered the wounded white horse lying beneath the candlelight. He remembered the words spoken by a being who had every reason to hate, yet chose compassion instead. The king slowly said, "Bring the 7 kings forward." The captured rulers raised their heads. They expected anger. They expected punishment. But what they saw was something they never imagined. They saw mercy. Brahmadatta spoke, "You came to my kingdom with the intention of taking our land. You brought suffering to countless people. For this, you must understand your mistake." The 7 kings lowered their heads. They knew they had failed. But then the king continued, "However, I will not answer your mistake with another mistake. I will not create another cycle of suffering. Today, I release you." The entire hall became silent. The generals looked shocked. The soldiers could not believe what they heard. The 7 kings lifted their eyes. They had prepared themselves to die. They had never prepared themselves to receive kindness. One king asked, "Why? Why would you spare us after everything we have done?" Brahmadatta looked toward the palace window. The morning sunlight entered the room. He answered, "Because someone greater than any warrior taught me this lesson. A wounded white horse, who suffered because of this war, still asked me to forgive you. He had arrows in his body. He was near death. Yet his heart contained no hatred. He thought not about revenge. He thought about peace." The 7 kings became silent. They had faced countless enemies. They had seen armies fight for power, but they had never encountered a heart like this. A creature they considered less than human had shown them a wisdom greater than kings. The 7 rulers bowed their heads. For the first time, shame entered their hearts. They realized they had been defeated not by weapons, not by soldiers, not by strength. They had been defeated by compassion. The kings made a vow before Brahmadatta. "We swear that we will never again bring war to this land. We will protect peace between our kingdoms. We will remember the mercy you have shown us." The agreement was written. The 7 kingdoms formed a peace alliance with Varanasi. The armies that once marched toward destruction now returned home carrying the message of peace. The people celebrated. But the greatest celebration was not the victory of one kingdom over another. The greatest celebration was the end of hatred. That evening, King Brahmadatta returned to Sindhava. The white horse was resting quietly. The king sat beside him. "My friend," he whispered, "your wisdom has saved more lives than your strength ever could. You defeated 7 armies. But your greatest victory was defeating hatred." Sindhava opened his eyes gently. The golden light of sunset reflected upon his white coat. He smiled peacefully. "My king, a strong body can protect people for a moment. But a compassionate heart can protect generations." The king held back his tears. He finally understood. The world does not become peaceful because the powerful defeat the weak. The world becomes peaceful when the powerful choose compassion. The days after the war became peaceful. Across the kingdom of Varanasi, the sounds of battle slowly disappeared. The fields where soldiers once marched became fields where farmers planted seeds again. The roads that once carried armies became paths where merchants and families traveled safely. Children returned to playing beside the rivers. Families returned to their daily lives. The people did not remember the war because of the battles that were fought. They remembered it because of the compassion that ended it. And at the center of this memory was Sindhava, the white horse who had carried a kingdom through darkness. The white horse who had shown that the greatest strength was not found in defeating others. It was found in protecting others. Inside the royal palace, the king spent every day beside Sindhava. The healers continued treating his wounds. But everyone knew that the horse's body was slowly becoming weaker. The king refused to leave his side. He no longer saw Sindhava as merely a royal horse. He saw him as a teacher. A teacher who had appeared in the form of a humble creature. A teacher who had revealed truths that even many wise people failed to understand. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with golden light, Sindhava asked the king to come closer. "My king," he said softly. "The time of this body is almost complete." The king's heart trembled. "Do not say this, my friend. Surely there must be another way. The greatest healers in the kingdom are caring for you. Your life is precious." Sindhava looked at him gently. Every life has its own season. The flower blooms. The flower withers. The river flows. The river reaches the ocean. Nothing in this world remains unchanged. The king lowered his head. He had conquered enemies. He had ruled a kingdom. He had faced countless challenges. But accepting the passing of someone he loved was the hardest lesson of all. Sindhava continued, "Great king, do not hold on to my body. Remember instead the meaning of my life. A body disappears. A name may fade. But a compassionate action can continue through generations. The peace we created today will live in the hearts of many people. That is the true continuation of life." The king listened quietly. The horse's words carried the calmness of someone who had understood the nature of existence. Sindhava looked toward the palace gardens. The flowers were blooming. The trees moved gently in the evening wind. Birds rested upon the branches. The world continued its quiet rhythm. He said, "Look at nature, my king. The tree does not cry when its leaves fall. The river does not fear when it reaches the sea. The sun does not grieve when the night arrives. Everything changes. And wisdom comes from accepting change with peace." The king wiped away his tears. He asked, "Then what should I remember after you leave?" Sindhava answered, "Remember these words. Never judge a being only by appearance. The smallest creature may carry the greatest wisdom. Never despise the weak. For the one you consider weak today may be the one who saves you tomorrow. Never allow strength to become pride. For pride turns a gift into a burden. And never allow suffering to become hatred. For hatred creates endless suffering. The king closed his eyes. Each word entered his heart like a seed planted in fertile soil. He understood now why Sindhava had been able to walk through an army of thousands. It was not because his body was stronger. It was because his heart was free. Free from anger. Free from hatred. Free from the desire to harm. The king held Sindhava's head gently. My friend, you came into this world as a horse. But your heart was greater than many kings. You have taught me what true nobility means. Sindhava rested peacefully. The stars slowly appeared above Varanasi. And beneath the quiet sky, the great white horse prepared to give his final teaching. The night became deeper over the kingdom of Varanasi. The palace grew quiet. The servants walked softly. The guards lowered their voices. Even the wind seemed to move more gently, as if the entire kingdom understood that something sacred was taking place. Inside the royal chamber, a small flame burned beside Sindhava. The golden candlelight touched his white coat. Although his body was weak, his presence remained peaceful. The king sat beside him. He did not want the night to end. He did not want to accept that the companion who had walked beside him through countless dangers would soon leave this world. For many years, Sindhava had carried him. Across mountains. Across rivers. Across battlefields. But now the king realized something. The horse had never only carried his body. Sindhava had carried his fears. He had carried his responsibilities. He had carried the hopes of an entire kingdom. And now, he had carried the king toward a deeper understanding of compassion. The king whispered, "My friend. If only I could exchange my life for yours." If only I could take away your pain. Sindhava looked at him with gentle eyes. My king, do not wish to change what cannot be changed. Every being follows the path of nature. The important thing is not how long a life lasts. The important thing is how that life is used. A short life filled with kindness can be greater than a long life filled with selfishness. The king remained silent. These words touched the deepest part of his heart. Sindhava continued, during this life, I was given the ability to run swiftly. I was given the strength to protect. I was given the opportunity to serve. And I used these gifts for their true purpose. Not for pride. Not for fame. But for the benefit of others. The horse paused. His breathing became softer. Then he spoke again, My king, remember this. Many people believe strength means the ability to defeat others. But true strength is the ability to control oneself. Many people believe victory means standing above others. But true victory is lifting others from suffering. Many people believe greatness comes from being feared. But true greatness comes from being trusted. The king listened with tears in his eyes. He remembered the monk in Jetavana who had mocked the weak. He understood why the Buddha had told this story. The lesson was not only about a horse from the distant past. It was about every person who mistakes power for greatness. It was about every heart that forgets compassion. It was about every moment when someone chooses pride instead of kindness. Sindhava slowly looked toward the king. Promise me one thing. The king immediately answered, anything. From this day forward, protect all beings. Do not measure their value by strength, appearance, or status. Remember that every life has its own purpose. The small bird has its song. The humble tree has its shade. The ordinary person has a kindness that may change the world. The king placed his hand upon Sindhava's forehead. I promise. I will remember. I will rule with compassion. The white horse closed his eyes peacefully. A gentle smile appeared upon his face. He had completed his journey. He had protected his king. He had protected countless lives. And most importantly, he had protected the hearts of those who might have fallen into hatred. Outside, the stars shone brightly. The moon watched silently over the palace. And beneath the peaceful sky, Sindhava, the noble white horse, passed away. But his wisdom did not disappear. Because a compassionate heart never truly leaves. Its kindness continues living in the actions of others. The morning after Sindhava's passing, Varanasi awakened beneath a quiet sky. The first rays of sunlight touched the palace walls. The birds sang softly among the trees. The rivers continued flowing. The flowers continued blooming. The world appeared unchanged. Yet within the hearts of the people, something had changed forever. The news spread throughout the kingdom. Sindhava, the noble white horse, had passed away. People gathered outside the palace. Farmers left their fields. Merchants closed their shops. Children stood beside their parents. Soldiers who had once watched him charge into battle now lowered their heads in silence. They had lost a horse. But they had gained a teacher. A teacher who showed them that true courage was not the absence of fear. True courage was choosing kindness when anger would have been easier. King Brahmadatta ordered that Sindhava receive the highest honors of the kingdom. A ceremony was prepared. The entire nation gathered. The king stood before the people. For a long time, he could not speak. His heart was filled with gratitude and sorrow. Finally, he said, "People of Varanasi, today, we do not gather only to mourn the passing of a great horse. We gather to remember a great heart. This being carried my body through battle. But more importantly, he carried our kingdom away from hatred. He taught us that mercy is not weakness. Compassion is not surrender. Forgiveness is not defeat. Sometimes, the greatest victory is the courage to stop the cycle of suffering." The people listened quietly. Many tears fell. The king continued, "From this day forward, let no one in this kingdom be judged only by appearance. Let no one be despised because they seem weak. Let the strong protect the vulnerable. Let the powerful remember those without power. Let every person understand that kindness is a strength greater than pride." After the ceremony, the king built a great memorial for Sindhava. It stood peacefully beside the palace gardens. Every year, people came to remember the white horse who ended a war without hatred. They told their children the story. They told their grandchildren. And generation after generation, the lesson remained alive. Many years later, in another time, in another place, the Buddha sat beneath the trees of Jetavana Monastery. The monks listened as he finished telling this ancient story. The arrogant monk who had once mocked the weak sat quietly. His heart had changed. He understood now. The Buddha looked upon the monks and said, "Monks, the white horse of that time was none other than myself. King Brahmadatta was King Bimbisara. The 7 enemy kings represented those who were filled with wrong views and harmful desires. And the soldiers who once valued only strong horses while ignoring weaker ones, were like the monk who looked down upon his fellow practitioners." The Buddha paused. The evening light surrounded the monastery. Then he continued, in that life, I was only a horse. My body was wounded. My life was near its end. Yet I still held compassion for those who caused my suffering. You now possess human life. You have the ability to understand the teachings. You have the opportunity to cultivate wisdom. Therefore, do not allow arrogance to grow within your heart. Do not harm those who appear weaker. Do not measure beings by their strength, because greatness is not found in power. Greatness is found in compassion. The monks bowed deeply. The arrogant monk lowered his head with shame. From that day onward, he changed. He spoke gently. He treated others with respect. He no longer laughed at the weak. Because he had learned the lesson of Sindhava. The world remembers many warriors, many kings, many conquerors. But the memory of one wounded white horse remained brighter than all of them. Because he proved something timeless, a sword can force someone to surrender. A crown can make someone obey, but only compassion can transform a heart. And when a heart transforms, the world itself begins to change.